Hey everyone, welcome to the Challengtunity Podcast. This is the pilot. This is the very first episode that we're doing, period. In fact, we've never done this before at all. I'm Chris Lawson. Wink, wink. I'm Chris Lawson. I'm the co-host of the podcast. I'm joined by Jordan Woolf, who is our other co-host. We're both agency owners of an agency in Canada and the States called Atrium. I'm excited to do this. Jordan, how are you?
I am less excited to do this, more nervous than anything. As you know, I'm getting pulled out of my comfort zone and drawn out of the shadows to be a little bit more public than I'm used to. But it's going to be a good thing. It's just a change of pace, let's say.
Yeah, I'm that in-your-face extrovert, always joking class clown guy, and you're that kind of stoic, just sit back, drink your whiskey kind of guy. So, this will be an interesting clash of personalities, I think.
More of a Palpatine, yeah.
Yeah. Well, there's a lot we're going to be covering in the pilot today. We're going to be talking a bit about who we are, why are we doing this? Who is this podcast for? What are you going to get out of following the Challengtunity podcast? What is Challengtunity? What does that even mean? There's a lot that we're going to be covering here today. But
great question.
It is a good question and kind of actually a really silly explanation. But before we get into any of that, nobody knows who we are. So let's pause and let's talk about you, Jordan Woolf. What makes you tick? Why did you get into digital marketing in the first place?
Yeah, I guess that's a good place to start. As you mentioned, obviously we both are now partners running a digital marketing agency. So that's the context of where we are today, but why we got here. For myself, it's been a career that has definitely been, very directed in the marketing agency world. I think it started with my father. He did a lot of business strategy, but from a finance background, which I could not stand. The numbers stuff. I can do numbers. I just don't like it. I prefer to pay other people for that part of things. But when it comes to being more creative and having that kind of mind, I always thought marketing would be a great way to do both of those things. So blend the creativity with the business and the strategy. And as I've learned over time, I think a little bit more engineer minded. We'll get into that later, I'm sure.
Mm-hmm.
But that's really where I got into the spark got lit, and I said, aha, this is an overlap of things I do and that I like and that I want to achieve, which kind of got me into the agency world. And I've been gradually building up a little repertoire of successes and failures from that point forward. And I think we've got a nice little agency at the moment, but long way to go for where we want to be too.
Well, I mean, you didn't just start out as an agency owner. I mean, you didn't even start out in a marketing role. Where did that start? I mean, I know your story.
Yeah, I mean, I did do the business school thing. So back then, I'd done graphic design as well as a business degree. And so moving out of that area, I knew I would get into some kind of marketing role at some point. But like anybody else out of school, it's you get what you get and you try to make a path make sense from there. So for me, I did find a burgeoning little web/graphic marketing company that I thought would be a better route to go. But it meant I kind of pitched the company with an opportunity to hire me as a business development person. So that was what I started in is a lot of sales, which, as you know, you learn a lot in the sales role. You hear a lot of different perspectives. You learn how to communicate effectively, get across points, make sure that people are really understanding your perspective and you're understanding theirs, which of course does play out in your marketing understanding in the end. So it's not a bad place to start for the marketing world, but just through, I think, organically having good conversations, I did actually make it towards more of the strategy side. That's what I got known for. That's what people came to me for. And, over the rest of my career, I've kind of cultivated in that direction, but that is where I started. Yeah, I was in business development, finding sales and bringing in new contracts.
I think what's crazy is that people don't really understand, I think, in the agency world that business development, or we call it account management a lot of the time, is very much a strategic role. Like your job is literally to, hear problems, build out solutions, diagnose and prescribe essentially. And sure, you got to get a sale and things like that, but it's a strategic role. It really, really is. So that role that you were in is very different than the role that you're in now. What would you say is your favorite, or the best part of your role, or the part of your role that you love getting up for in the morning?
Well, I know we'll probably cover this in a lot more detail in a future episode about what Atrium is as an agency. We're not really here to promote that. It's our business, but it's more of our background than anything else. But the agency that you and I have created is kind of like a Venn diagram of our two, skill sets and history and background. So what that's meant is we've created an agency that has a lot of the things that I enjoy and a lot of the things that make up my personality and skills embedded into its business model. So for me, Atrium is more of it's a process engineering company that happens to do marketing. So that is the part I like. I like kind of looking at, to a creative agency might look like a problem that's solved with, mind mapping and creative concepts. But for me, I look at a problem that a business might be having, and I go like, oh, let me break that into its pieces. Let me see how they're all connected. Let me see how I can, move one knob and adjust another to get a different result on the other end. So that is the part I like. But it's a unique opportunity that we have at our particular agency. It's not normal to think that way, I don't think.
No, I don't think it is, but it's also what's made us very, very successful, and something that gives us a very unique lens, which is a big part of why we're doing this. Okay, so enough about all that. I mean, what do you do for fun? What are your hobbies? Did you whittle? Do you spin yarn? What do you
not
do?
a huge whittler. I'd say I enjoy things that are tough. I'm a challenge-driven kind of person. So for me, hiking a mountain, spending time with my dog outside in the snow.
Which is part wolf.
Which is. But, if I want to unwind and disconnect, usually you'll find me sitting in a chair listening to music way too loud in the dark, listening to an album. I'm kind of a music freak as far as that's concerned, but that's just when I want to wind down. Beyond that, I'd say my biggest thing when people know me is I'm a workaholic. So I enjoy the business what we're in. I enjoy the challenges we're trying to overcome and solve with our business model. And I enjoy doing that same thing for other people. So even when I'm, buried in things that I can solve for my own business, I'm just loving having an opportunity to hear someone else's problem and go like, ooh, have you tried this? Maybe I can help you there. That's who I am. So I enjoy that stuff. No, well, you and I obviously started, an agency together, but we didn't start at the same place to get here.
No.
I do remember one kind of anecdote about what made an impact for me to kind of go like, hey, maybe this Chris guy and I could maybe create an agency that's going to be a little unique. For me, that was back at Inbound, which is a conference that's held annually by HubSpot. For those that don't know, it's attended by thousands of marketers, other agency owners, lots of speeches from other agencies. At the time, you and I were both in an agency, but not running an agency. And I remember listening to one particular presentation. I don't remember who it was or what agency, but the model they were describing was centered around the fact that there was kind of a yin and a yang of a kind of an upfront first conversations kind of person that would handle, meeting those new customers. You could say there's some sales in that, but it was more, the insight was that it was more around initial strategy that they were doing. And then once they'd signed the client, you kind of transitioned to the other head of that agency that would be more the ongoing relationship strategy and building that up over time. So, I thought, aha, your skill set, my skill set kind of talked to that. And I said, that's at least something to plant a seed in and grow from. So for me, that was a big moment. But I don't know if you have a different perspective on that, looking back at it, or if there was something else that kind of sparked you into this crazy idea that we have.
I mean, we've been to a lot of those conferences over the years, and I think one of the things that I like the most about those conferences is probably the things that most people never think about, because usually people are going into those scenarios trying to steal or borrow from other agencies to try to, leverage things that are working. I'm usually trying to figure out what's not working. And I remember 2 sessions. They were side sessions. I do recall one of them being the one you're talking about, where you're correct. It was kind of like, you call it yin and yang. I would kind of look at it as inward and outward focused, and it kind of just complemented each other. And we had the skill sets already there to do it. And at that time, as an agency, we were rocking. We were doing great, but at the same time, we were in this weird place of evolution to really try to solve industry-wide challenges. Really try to solve the modern agency, model. And you talk about your identity really being caught up in problem solving. Mine is not necessarily the problem solving aspect. It's the high I get from legitimately helping people or helping companies flourish. And those sessions kind of helped create the framework. I remember other sessions where, they were remote models, or they were models or there was one session where there were 6 or 7 different agencies that were inbound marketing agencies at the time. Some were doing very, very well, but they were picking apart each other and picking apart different problems. And I went, okay, noted. And I just remember taking all of those things back and looking at you and being like, all right, let's go. Because everything that we have going on here is 100% aligned in the right direction.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Obviously you haven't had the chance to talk about your background very much, but, how did you even get in that room with me to begin with?
Yeah, I mean, much like you, I think my mom was a big influence. Both of us think alike. And so, when she was in a marketing role for a monster construction company, like a global construction company, and I'd be in the middle of talking to her in the car, and she'd, shush me by covering my mouth, and she'd be like, listen to this ad. And, I learned as a kid, what good ads were, and I listened, and I watched all her print, and I watched all of her graphic design stuff, and using Corel Draw and all these things, and I just naturally just picked it up. And, in my adult life, I went through more of a banking, role, mortgage broking type industry type direction, which got me all about process and, policies and documentation and learning how to work with business professionals and things like that. But then I started just naturally getting into marketing consulting, and bing, bang, boom, courses later, certificates later, this and that. All of a sudden, I entered into the same agency, 8 years ago that you were in, and the rest is history. We just grabbed hammers and started building. And I think the thing that you and I have in common the most is we're very end goal driven. We're not just here to enjoy the day. We want to solve something and see it flourish and see big impact. And yeah, that's kind of how I got here.
Yeah, I think thinking on what I like to do and part of my hobbies and being kind of a workaholic, the part about your job that I'm always a little bit envious of is you get to have pound for pound way more conversations with more diverse businesses than I do. So, I only get to work with the clients that we work with, versus yourself. You're having dozens of conversations with people that may become a client. They may become a client down the road. They may become a client tomorrow. I think that's something I would find really, really interesting about what you do. And but I don't know if that's the same for you. Like, is that
I love
your
it.
favorite part?
Yeah. I'd say that's probably, if not my favorite part, one of for sure. I mean, the coolest thing about my role is I never get bored. You might be issuing out very similar, solutions to different industries, but 1 minute I'm talking about an oil and gas company, or talking to an oil and gas company. The next I'm talking to, I don't know, a dating app company, and then the next it's a retail chain, and the next it's a municipality. And the strategies within the services that we provide may vary, or contextually, whatever. But you're trying to educate a lot that's another part of my job that I love. But because I'm never talking to the same companies over and over and over again, like a marketing manager has to issue out the same $100, $200, $300,000 of ad spend or whatever every single year and just keep doing it over and over and over again. I get to play marketing roles with dozens of businesses every single week. And so it's a lot of fun.
I think it's a bit of a challenge, though, to break through that. I mean, there's a cliche whenever you meet somebody in the marketing or business world, you got to put your walls up, I guess, if you're client side and go like, okay, what's this agency trying to get out of it? But I know that that's not the angle we take, and I know you still have to struggle to get through that. But it must be nice once you kind of go like, oh, they realize, oh, this is a different kind of conversation. I can let you know some of the concerns I have, the things that keep me up at night, so we can actually do our job.
Yeah, well, it enables me to, kind of, we call my department the initial strategies department. It started as sales and turned into business development and just has been evolving. And that's because we have more of a consultative approach. And, it might be a bad thing, but we lead with our heart a lot. It's also why we have industry high attrition and retention rates. And, not to, put a plug there or anything, but it's just like, the heart of how we operate as an organization, I think, is really seen by the clients that end up working with us. Because those clients are looking for that. They're looking for somebody to partner with and somebody who's going to get it, not somebody who's going to force feed them a solution and, collect a retainer. And I don't think we've ever lost the identity of our staff, throughout any of this, which I think is fantastic.
Yeah, I'm hoping that people will find this episode in particular, after they've maybe watched something that we do down the road, episode 45 or something like that, and they're trying to figure out like who are these guys anyway, and what makes them tick. But like you said, we do have a lot of overlap where we do think similarly. We've had some heated battles as well, but that's probably healthy.
Yes, we have.
Yeah. But one area we do overlap is we both have a kind of a musical inclination. I can't play worth a damn. You can play some music as well as, while I will listen to it, and I have vinyl records. I know when I was in town last, visiting the office up there, that we'd had a discussion about you were humming and hawing about buying a vinyl record box set or something.
Yep. Yeah.
How'd that go?
Well, so I don't want to go on a rant on vinyl, but that's a different podcast all on its own. Maybe we should.
Everyone turns off. It's like,
yeah. This is a marketing podcast, It was, there's 2 times a year, there's this thing called Record Store Day, and Fleetwood Mac issued this box set of every one of their albums for Record Store Day. There was a limited run of them, and it's hard to find, but all of the albums in there were alternatives. So like every song in it was, like a different version. It was a live recording or whatever. And I wanted to buy it so bad. And it was like $300. And I go through these modes where it's like, I'm okay to spend a whole bunch of money. And then other days I'm just like so frugal. And it was a frugal day and I was holding it in my hands. I chose not to do it. And so, you were up staying with me for the week, because we live in different cities, and I chose not to buy it. What you don't know is I actually went back and bought it. I also bought two other box sets at the same time. So although I didn't spend $300 that day because I was being cheap, I went a week later and spent $700. So welcome to Chris Lawson.
Well, yeah, whether we just lost some points there with people or not, or gained points, who knows? But we'll leave that up to you to judge, the discerning audience.
Yeah. Well, we're all flawed individuals at the core of it. Anyways, enough about us. I think we've talked for about 20 minutes about who we are, and
you'll get to know us through future episodes in a lot more detail, I'm sure.
Yeah. No, we're a crazy, very intellectual bunch. It's really weird. So I guess the question is, why the heck are we even doing this podcast in the first place, Jordan? I mean, maybe throw it over to you. Like, why did you want to do a podcast? Do you want to do a podcast?
Yeah, that's actually a good question. I think you and I will have slightly different answers here. Like we said earlier, I'm a bit more of a works from the shadows kind of person. So being in front of a camera is not my most comfortable place, and it's not something I would wake up in the morning and go like, oh boy, I need to do this. But it's not hard. I enjoy, this in the moment that now that we've done a little bit of it, but it's not my go-to approach to the world. But you got to be honest at some point when, in what we do, we have a lot of conversations, we meet a lot of different people, and they want to know advice, they want guidance, they want to, get those insights that we've been building up over a long period of time. And at a certain point, enough people asked for it and said, well, why aren't you doing this? Why don't you, get those ideas out there? I'd like to see that. You got to go, okay, all right, I'll bite. Let's give that a whirl. That's why I'm doing this. How about yourself?
Some of the same, I like helping people. I like finding solutions. I know when some of our clients found out that we were about to start, doing this, they all went, ecstatic. I'm also a musician, playing on stages and stuff like that. And so I'm kind of used to being in the spotlight, unlike yourself. It kind of matches my personality. Not that I like the spotlight. I don't generally like it being put on me, but I'm comfortable in it. And this is just a good outlet for us just to have fun to, banter, share insights, whatever, and hopefully help marketing managers and different individuals. But the funniest thing about it is, as we've entered into this discussion, we did have a lot of banter in around the topic of the name. I've never loved the name Challengtunity for the podcast. We went back and forth a billion times, and we both ended up deciding, okay, it just makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the world hits you over the head enough times with it. It's probably the right answer, but it was one that we fought real hard to not make the real answer. But so the word Challengtunity, it is, it's an ism that we came up with at our agency, and it's almost like an inside joke. So whenever there's something that we're having a meeting about on a client project or a new service we're trying to invent or working through, really any challenge that might come up in the day to day, inevitably somebody's gonna be like, what are we gonna do? This is very frustrating, or and usually somebody as a joke, just to kind of cut the ice, will be like, well, this could be a good Challengtunity.
Okay. But let's be honest here. It wasn't unanimously, used. You came up with this years ago, and when you used it, everyone laughed at you and thought it was ridiculous. And then it stuck to the point where the staff want Challengtunity hoodies and sweatpants made. So it has become a topic that is, it's stuck. It's not going away at Atrium. That's for sure. That is for sure.
I mean, but it gets to the core of what we're all doing in marketing to some degree. Like whether you're a marketing manager or business leader, we're all solving problems to some degree: communication problems, messaging problems, business model problems, business development problems. All of those things, come coupled with potential opportunities. Because if a problem comes in that's challenging your business, maybe it's also challenging your competitors. So if you solve it, that becomes a distinct advantage for your business. So there's always kind of the opposite side of that coin whenever those things come up, and you produce value through that process. Being an agency, we're in particular really facing that kind of model where we have that. But yeah, maybe we should talk about like who this is for. Like what are we going to talk about here? And
well, it's a good segue because Challengtunity being a blend of being a challenge and an opportunity is more than just what you're facing. It's a mentality. You have to, anybody who is looking at a problem as a roadblock, and is not actively looking for a solution or anything like that, they're never going to look at it as a Challengtunity. And so typically, this podcast is really going to be honed in on, marketing professionals, business leaders. So that could include president, CEOs, C-levels, general managers, business development, executives, people that are really trying to push forward in their business. We're really fortunate to have a very unique lens because of so many or thousands and thousands of businesses that we've been able to serve over the years, very often we can go into a conversation with a business that has no idea how to solve it, and we can pull from 800 conversations that we had prior.
And I think that's why, we have value in a lot of those conversations one-to-one, but that's also why they're asking us, hey, you guys should do a podcast, because we stumble into probably a volume of more challenges than the average person. So being able to talk those through, being able to present that, show insights when there's insights, tell stories where there's stories, but to achieve things like evolving the dialogue is something that's really important. It's very easy for things like new technology to come up or a challenge to come up, and it just kind of simmers. It doesn't really evolve. It doesn't grow. It doesn't get solved sometimes. So we're hoping to be part of that process. I'm not saying we're going to have all the answers. Certainly, we're not that brilliant, but we will be able to be part of the dialogue and part of the momentum.
Well, and I think it's fair to say that, most businesses or, even specialists, when they have insights or they have some sort of secret to unlocking something in their industry or whatever, or even just insight as to what's happening with an algorithm or something, and they want to keep those chips close to their chest. And I don't think that's the right way to do it. I think we're in an industry that's evolving faster than any industry. There's enough pie to eat, and more than anything, we're stronger together. Solving those problems, evolving that dialogue, like you said, is essential, I think, especially when we're living in a world where digital marketing is needed in every single industry, whether you're a non-for-profit all the way through to a multinational business. So.
Yeah, I mean, again, our ability in an agency environment is exposure, right? So when we have the ability to come across things that otherwise people wouldn't, that's another one of the motivations as to why we're doing this podcast. If I was hearing the answers to the questions that I was getting proposed every day, then we wouldn't be needed. But I do often find that, like, hey, no one's talking about this. Why aren't people talking about this? Or this is a unique perspective that I don't think people have really talked through yet. Let's see where that goes. So we're hoping to do that in this podcast as we go along. Of course, getting your feedback along the way will be important. Like, subscribe, share, all that jazz. But the evolution of those ideas is really important, I think. So when we have a problem to solve together, I think we have an opportunity to have a dialogue, pass the ball to the next person, have them have a dialogue, and then we get stronger as a whole industry that way. I don't really care what we're doing, a year from now. I just know that it's going to be hopefully better than what we were working on today, because we will have solved enough problems where we're doing something completely different that's building on those fundamentals, and that excites me.
I 100% agree. And with that, as we kind of wrap up the pilot, we're excited, over the course of the next year to just be producing content every few weeks that hopefully is there to not necessarily get engagement. We're not looking for that, although that's fantastic. We're hoping to make a difference and to make some impact in your business, in your life, in your role. So we invite you, be a part of this, tell your friends, subscribe, like Jordan said, do all those little things, click here, click there, wherever the heck that is. And we'll see you on the next podcast. Appreciate your time.
Awesome.